There being a quorum, I call this meeting to order. So, Lonnie, would you please lead us in invocation?
Lord, as we gather together, we just ask you to look after all the military, our leaders in the nation, state and local levels. Lord, we just ask you to guide and direct them all and look after their well-being. Lord, we ask you to watch over our facilities here and the employees of the city of Jasper. And all these favors we ask. Amen.
Brandon, will you lead us in our pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Since Lisa Hoyle will not be with us tonight as city clerk, then I need a motion to ask for our city manager to be voted as interim clerk.
I'll make a motion that we make Brandon the interim clerk.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. So the agenda has been mailed out. Everyone should have a copy of that. Do we have a motion on the floor to adopt that agenda?
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes have been distributed. Everyone should have a copy. So I'd like to call for a motion to dispense with the minutes and adopt them as read.
So move. Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Council, it is up to you to decide who is going to be our mayor pro tem. Our charter says that that's for a 2-year period of time, so that's what we will be doing now. And I ask for a motion from the floor to appoint a mayor pro tem.
Mr. Mayor, I nominate Mr. Jim Looney as our mayor pro tem for the next 2 years.
We have a nomination. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a move and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Looney will be our mayor pro tem. Okay, a list of committee appointments are in the packet, but at this particular point in time, I don't think that we're ready to make those appointments. I think that it's going to take more time than what we have tonight. So what I'm going to ask for is I'd like to have that table until a further time to be determined.
I make a motion that we table the annual appointments.
Have a motion. Second. Discussion.
Is there anything we can be doing to help this along? I know
Council.
there is a list of voters that has been distributed. I think that's a great start. I gave a list of individuals that I had thought of to the mayor. Is there anything else we can be doing? Could the other council members be working on the list, get them to the mayor, and maybe he compile that into something that we can be discussing at the next meeting or workshop, whenever it's determined?
Yeah, I think a workshop specifically to that point, and there may be others that come up, but I think a workshop before our next meeting to kind of review names, give us the opportunity to approach folks about their interest. There have been some resignations in the transition, which are fully expected, but some of these are critical positions with business on the so-called books, and we need to be sensitive to the time. But I think a special meeting, review folks who.
And these lists, I don't think that is limiting us in anything.
I
That's
think
just
that's a
a
good
place
idea.
to start.
Yeah, to at least start with it, yeah. Everybody getting something.
Council, I think the idea of the list is the way to go. I just need input from everyone. I've already assembled some names, and that's not something that I want to do by myself. I want council input. So, as far as a future work session goes, you're going to be out of town, Councilman.
Next Monday, correct? Well, next Monday through Friday, actually. 13th through the, whatever Friday is.
So how would the 27th suit everyone as far as a potential date?
I'm available the 27th.
It's a Monday evening. That works for me.
Good for me.
Me too.
So, Brad?
Go.
So I'll entertain a motion then that we have a work session on the 27th of January.
So moved.
Second.
You want to delineate a time, or do you want to play that by ear?
Well, let's see, if we do 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I think there are going to be some people upset, so what time would be?
6.
6 p.m.
Let's stick with 6.
Let's stick with 6, okay, we'll do 6, okay?
Awesome. For me.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
did y'all vote on tabling for the appointments?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, at this point, all right, at this point, is there any more discussion?
Is there a date you'd like to have a list of names from the council?
Not really.
Just sometime before the 27th?
Right, before the 27th.
I move we table the appointment of annual,
No,
gosh,
appointments.
yeah, table annual appointments to our authorities and commissions.
Okay, so we have a motion to table our work session until the 27th, when we will discuss committee appointments. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Unanimous. Consideration of approval for the legal services agreement for general legal services as city attorney for the city of Jasper for David Syfan from Hulsey, Oliver and Mayor LLP as lead attorney, and for mayor and/or city manager to execute letter of contract for 2020. Brad?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we officially established a time and date for our meeting. If we could make a
We did
motion.
say 6 o'clock.
I
On
think
the
that would
27th.
require,
We'll need a motion.
need a motion
Oh, I'm
to
sorry.
establish.
Make a
that.
motion, we have a work session on January 27th at 6 p.m.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Thanks, sir.
Unanimous, thank you. Now, I'm not going to read that again, Brad.
The second reading.
I did a really good reading of that.
You did a good job.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening and Happy New Year. In your package tonight, you have some background information, specifically a letter from Mr. David Syfan with Hulsey, Oliver and Mahar LLP for assisting us as lead attorney, city attorney for the city of Jasper. Essentially, what we will be asking for at the staff level is for Mr. Syfan to represent the city on an hourly basis. For the record, the hour that has been provided is $150 per hour. This is to allow us to just utilize the services for purposes of coming to meetings and/or for contract work if we have some sort of ordinance to help draft. And also, I would like to take a note that the agenda item reflects just Mr. Syfan, but in your packet, you'll also see that staff reached out to Mr. Pickett to solicit his assistant in an assistant city attorney capacity at a comparable rate, along with some other things illustrated. However, speaking with Mr. Pickett this afternoon, he advised me that he would respectfully decline to do it on those terms in the relating to the hourly rate. And I told him that I was not in the position that I could acquiesce his preferred hourly rate. So with that, the only thing on the agenda relates to is item C from Mr. Syfan.
So do we have a motion to accept this approval for the legal services agreement?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited to help you.
Thank you. Old business. Subletting the city property update, Brandon.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Council, you may recall some months back in 2019, staff had received direction to compose, in essence, a user agreement for exploration of utilizing city facilities, parks, etc. A very, very, very preliminary draft agreement had been submitted to Mr. Pickett prior to the December meeting, at which time there had not been adequate time for dialogue. Subsequent to that, there's not been any additional engagement. I've taken the position that you all, as an elected body, has asked staff to look at ways to the feasibility in light of having new lead counsel. I would respectfully ask that this just be removed from the agenda to allow staff to work with either a committee at such time as one may be appointed and or with legal counsel to draft something that could then be at least reviewed. So there's no action needed since I feel as though that staff has received the adequate direction already.
Make a motion, we table this item.
We have a motion to table.
Agenda.
You want,
We want to remove it though, don't we, and just, because you already have direction on it, basically.
Yeah, my contention is y'all have already given me direction to formulate some sort of agreement. This was just left on, and rather than just to remove it without some sort of explanation, I felt it was prudent to at least keep it on there to say that it was not forgotten. It's just going to have to be in the
I'll pull
appropriate.
my motion and change it to removing it from the agenda.
Have a motion to remove the item from the agenda
Second.
and a second. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor and Brandon, in a conversation that Mayor Lawrence and I had today, there were a few things I think that would kind of fall under a very similar category as it relates to parks and maintenance of parks and possibly some sort of leasing of some of the city facilities. So I would like to, if indeed we soon have some sort of retreat or planning session, that we consider this at that time to be a bigger picture item to help us with how we maintain those streets, parks, etc., including the duck pond and other things. I seem to remember in the budget process that you had made some plans for an individual that was going to be kind of over those things. In the past, I think the city had that, and it was tremendously successful at the time until that individual left the city. So it's just something I'd like to re-explore at a later date.
Thank you, Bill.
sir.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Early alcohol sales. This might apply to someone who has an interest in our audience. Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, I'm asking Mr. Syfan to join me for a moment. In regards to, this is our second reading, and substantively, there's been no changes from the first to the second reading. However, as of today, I did ask Mr. Syfan, knowing that I just wanted another set of eyes to look over the ordinance, as this would be a second reading, and presumably, if approved and final, I just thought it would be good to have him incorporated into the discussion. So as you recall, and just for some background, this was a voter-approved referendum item back in November. We had a first reading and to amend the ordinance in December. This is the second reading. And I think, David, I can essentially just kind of synopsize that what we're doing here, Mr. Mayor, is amending in accordance with the Senate Bill 17 codified OCGA 3-3-7J.11 and signed the law May 8th of 18, authorize cities and counties to permit and regulate Sunday sales of distilled spirits and alcoholic beverages for purposes of by the drink from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Once again, the current is from 12:30 and on. This moved it back an hour and a half. An election was conducted November 5th by the 2019 by Pickens County Board of Elections. Registration and matter set forth in legislation and referendum placed on the ballot to authorize the sale of alcoholic beverages for consumption on the premises of Sundays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. is approved by the electors of the city of Jasper, Georgia. Section 1, Article 9 of Chapter 10, Section 10-312 of the City of Jasper, Georgia Code of Ordinances is hereby amended. It shall read as follows. Section 10-3-1, hours and days for sale of purchase. Sales by consumption on premises or retail by the package licensees. It shall be an offer for any licensee under this chapter, person employed by a licensee to sell, offer for sale, transfer, or offer to transfer to any other person any spirituous liquor, malt beverages, and or wine for consumption on the premises and by the package between the hours of 6 a.m. and 1 a.m. Monday through Friday, between 6 a.m. and 12 o'clock midnight on Saturday, and between 12:30 and 12 midnight on Sunday. And that should be unlawful for any person to purchase, receive, or offer to receive from a licensee or person employed by a licensee any spirituous liquors, malt beverages, and wine for consumption on the premise between the hours of 6 a.m. and 1 a.m. Monday through Friday, between 6 a.m. and 12 midnight on Saturday, and between 12:30 p.m. and 12 midnight on Sunday, provided the establishment's license for consumption of premises which derive at least 50% of its total annual gross food and beverage sales from the sale of prepared meals or food in all the combined retail outlets of the individual establishments where food is served in any licensed establishment which derives at least 50% of its total annual gross income from the rental of rooms for overnight lodging shall be permitted to sell spirituous liquors, malt beverages, and or wines on Sundays between the hours of 11 a.m. and midnight on approval and issuance of the permit authorized such sales. License application shall be submitted to the city manager who shall issue such license upon payment of a fee as established from time to time by the mayor and board of the city council to establish meetings, the applicable requirements of this chapter and or state law. In the case of restaurants, the alcohol beverage Sunday sales license application, the required fees may be submitted at the same time as all other license applications. The city shall have 90 days to determine if the application qualifies for Sunday sales of alcohol beverages. During such 90-day period, the applicant shall be granted a temporary permit, which shall automatically expire 90 days after issuance. If the applicant qualifies for Sunday sales of alcohol beverages, the applicant shall be issued an annual Sunday sales permit. If the applicant qualifies for Sunday sales of alcoholic beverages, no further fee shall be necessary. If the applicant does not qualify for Sunday sales of alcohol beverages, the city will retain all fees paid in this subsection, including $200 processing fee. It is hereby declared to be the intention of the ordinance that its sections, paragraphs, sentences, clauses, and phrases are severable, and that any section, paragraph, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is declared to be unconstitutional or invalid. It shall not affect any of the remaining sections, paragraphs, sentences, clauses, or phrases of this ordinance. All ordinances in conflict are to be repealed. The ordinance shall become effective upon passage by the mayor and council of the city of Jasper and signature of the mayor.
Now, I just wanted to note that I had plugged in the right code section, and then when I looked at that, the older code section that you were modifying, the days and hours that were in it applied both to package and for consumption on the premises. And so what y'all did on the first reading only applied to consumption on the premises, but you were removing that old section. So I went back and revised the hours to make it consistent with that old section. But as Brandon indicated, we changed the hours on Sunday for basically restaurants to 11 a.m. until midnight.
Okay. Do you need any action on that?
Just approval of the
I think we had to approve this as second reading.
second reading.
Make a motion, we approve this as second reading of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Ordinance amendment, farm winery, second reading. Brandon?
Once again, Mr. Mayor, Council, I will say that this was something that we had begun initiating in November for the first reading. However, we suspended or tabled the second reading in December to allow for, to see how things played out with the early alcohol sales second reading, so we're not having to go back and readjust, but not to presuppose either. So, in essence, what this allows is the same ordinance that we have on the book as it relates to farm wineries. We merely inserted the language of manufacturer to allow that had been left out for some reason. So specifically, this would be to amend section 10-28 of chapter 10, article 2. Exceptions regarding farm winery licenses. Farm wineries shall be subject to all qualifications and regulations of this chapter except as otherwise specifically provided in this section. Any farm winery applying for license hereunder must submit proof of state licensure and compliance with state production requirements as set forth in OCGA 3-6-21.1. Farm winery license issued pursuant to this article shall authorize a winery to manufacture, sell, or distribute its wine and the wine of any other state farm winery licensed by the state within the jurisdictional limits of the city at retail in a tasting room or other facility on the premise of the winery or on property located contiguous to the winery and owned by the winery or by an affiliate of the winery for consumption on the premise and in closed packages for consumption off the premise. Farm winery license pursuant to this article is authorized to sell its wine and the wine of any other state farm winery license on Sundays from 11 a.m. until 12 midnight in the tasting room or other licensed farm winery facility. Nothing in this section shall be construed as to authorize a farm winery to sell wine on any premise other than set forth herein except when authorized by the mayor for special events. Farm wineries shall be subject to the excise tax levy on wine sales as provided in this chapter. Annual license fees are established by the city council. And that would be the second reading.
Need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Watershed monitoring proposals. I think we have at least one of those, Brandon.
Yes, sir. And in response to direction received from council, staff working with Turner City Engineering did solicit additional quotes. Mr. Hall is here if there's any specific questions that I'm not qualified to answer regarding the reasoning behind this, but In essence, this is a requirement through EPD for us to monitor water quality and biological components due to the wastewater treatment plant. You'll see in your packet that there have been 4 firms solicited. 3 of the firms provided a quote. For the record, I will read them along with Corvula declined to submit a proposal, but the firms, CCR Environmental, total cost of $21,635, Fox Environmental of $32,300, and Nutter and Associates, $36,255. So with that, the low quote was still CCR Environmental, which is consistent with the previous proposal, so they did not deviate above or below the original $21,635.
So now, are you seeking a motion to accept that?
To authorize council to approve
Approve that
whichever
expenditure?
one, yes, sir.
I need a motion to approve the expenditure, please.
I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement for city of Jasper.
Your one. This is on the,
D.
yeah.
D.
The under old business, John. So,
I make a motion that we approve for staff to proceed with the acceptance of the low bid on watershed management proposals.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. For new business, we have request for special event alcohol license for the Carriage House.
And
Brandon?
I will say, Mr. Mayor, that I believe Ms. Thornton is here. She wants to come on down, and I will let her have a little bit of a plug to make some comments. I do want to tell y'all that staff has received a request from them, so all the paperwork is in proper order, and I'll let Sherry just kind of take it away. What you want to do?
We're doing our annual Valentine's banquet dinner. We'll have 2 seatings. We'll be doing 6 and 8 this year since it's on a Friday. We will be serving wine and beer. So we just need a little approval for a special event license to do that. It's our only time through the year that we serve alcohol. It was a little bit of a hit for us last year. It's the only time that we did it last year. I think it's the only time we've ever done it. So it was new for us.
Great.
I'm going to try it this year again.
Council, what's your pleasure? I'd like to go to this myself.
Motion to approve request for special event alcohol license for the Carriage House, February 14th, 2020.
Have a motion to approve?
Second.
The second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Is that easy enough for you?
That was great.
Can't wait. It'll be a fun evening.
It will. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Agreement for tourism development, Brandon, with the Pickett County Chamber.
Mayor, Council, unfortunately, Ms. Godfrey's not in attendance tonight. She gives her regards, but I told her procedurally, I think annually, we enter into calendar year January 1 to December 31 agreement, whereupon we execute an agreement for just tourism development services. So beyond that, Mr. Syfan has looked over, and in regards to, I don't know if Dr. Proctor has any comments in regards to this, but I think it's just pretty well straightforward agreement for approval.
So for the benefit of our hotel motel tax funds that the chamber serving as the designated marketing organization, the state suggests that we have a contract, and actually our auditors did recommend that we do this. And so we've done a fairly informal method up until last year where we had this agreement that we worked out. And for the benefit of the council as well as the public, I'm no longer affiliated with the chamber other than a membership. After 7 years on the board, my last day has been served, and it was an enjoyable experience. And now I'm going to be focusing on the transition that we've got going forward. So, but I appreciate it.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve this for staff to execute this agreement with our Pickett County Chamber.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. We have an ordinance to amend the city charter. Brandon?
Mr. Mayor, Council, and I'm going to tee it up and let Mr. Syfan speak on this a little more intelligently, but in essence, in the spirit of housekeeping and getting some things on the docket, there's a couple of ways of looking at your city charter. The way that staff is looking at is kind of a home rule type, and the action in regards to this ordinance is dealing with how we read ordinances. So I'll let Mr. Syfan kind of explain a little further.
When I looked at your meeting procedure, it sort of surprised me that y'all actually read word for word each ordinance that came before you, which, you know, obviously takes a lot of time. And Lord help us if we ever had to adopt something like a zoning ordinance that has 100 pages. You know, you would literally have to sit here for 3 hours for someone to read to you 100 pages. And to me, that's not a good or efficient use of your time, especially at meetings. And so what I had suggested is that Georgia law allows you, by way of a home rule ordinance, to amend your charter. And so I've developed this home rule ordinance to clarify that you just have to introduce the ordinance in one meeting and then pass it in a second separate meeting. And that, of course, you know, the ordinance is provided to you ahead of time. The ordinance would also be public record and available to anybody in the general public that wanted to get a copy and actually read it word for word. But in this way, instead of taking all the time to literally read each ordinance, you could use the time to either have Brandon or me sort of hit the high points with what the ordinance does, and then if there's a need or if y'all want it to be read, we certainly can do that. But with this amendment, we won't have to literally read word for word every ordinance that you pass. And hopefully that'll make the meetings much more efficient and flow along a lot better. And besides your kids, hardly anybody enjoys being read to. So that's the thinking behind this ordinance. And with that explanation, since we gotta do the reading to pass the ordinance before we start the new procedure, I'm going to read to you this home rule ordinance. It's an ordinance to amend the city charter of the city of Jasper, Georgia, to amend section 2.24 of the city charter by deleting said section in its entirety and substituting in lieu thereof a new section 2.24 providing for the ordinance form, ordinance procedure, and notice and adoption of ordinances, to repeal conflicting provisions of the charter and for other purposes. Whereas the City Council of the City of Jasper, Georgia is authorized by OCGA section 36-35-3 to enact a home rule ordinance amending the current city charter of the city of Jasper, which is Georgia Laws 1983, page 3534. And whereas the City Council of the City of Jasper, Georgia desires to amend the city charter by deleting in its entirety section 2.24 and substituting in lieu thereof a new section 2.24 to establish new procedures regarding ordinance form, procedure for adoption and notice and adoption of ordinances. And now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Jasper, Georgia, and it is hereby ordained by the city charter in OCGA section 36-35-3 as follows. Section 1, amendment of section 2.24 of the city charter. Section 2.24 of the city charter, Georgia Laws 1983, page 3534, is hereby amended by striking in its entirety section 2.24 and substituting in lieu thereof a new section 2.24, in which shall read as follows. Section 2.24, ordinance form, procedure, notice and reading. Subsection A, except as herein provided, every official action of the council which is become law shall be by ordinance. Every proposed ordinance shall be introduced in writing and must be finalized at the time of passage at the second meeting for final adoption. The enacting clause shall be, the council of the city of Jasper hereby ordains, and every ordinance shall so begin. Subsection B, an ordinance may be introduced by any council member. For an ordinance to be adopted, it must be introduced at one meeting, regular or special, and passed at a second meeting, regular or special. A literal reading of the ordinance in the public meetings of the council is not required for passage of the ordinance. In the discretion of the council, the mayor, city manager, city attorney, or other agent of the city may provide a summary of the ordinance in the meetings of the council. Proposed ordinances shall be public records and available to the general public. Subsection C, upon passage, all ordinances shall be signed by the mayor or the mayor pro tempore if presiding and the city clerk. Subsection D, failure to comply with the technical requirements of this section shall not invalidate an ordinance if the intention of the governing authority that the ordinance be effective is evident. Section 2, effective date. This ordinance is hereby adopted and effective upon passage, the public health, safety, and general welfare demanding it. Section 3, repeal of conflicting ordinances. The charter and all ordinances that are in conflict with this ordinance are repealed to the extent of the conflict. And then so passed and adopted, and the signatures of the mayor and clerk. And I would submit that as the first reading of the home rule ordinance, and we need a motion to approve the first reading.
I make a motion that we approve the first reading.
We have a motion to approve the first reading. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Mr. Syfan, is there some sort of follow-up that the city will ultimately be responsible for doing with the Secretary of State's office so that they'll have a record of any kind of amendments we make?
Yes, in order to pass a home rule ordinance, and you can see on the first page, you gotta have it be adopted in one meeting, and then you gotta publish a legal notice about the proposed adoption once a week for 3 weeks. I've also have already sent to the Pickens County Superior Court clerk a copy of the ordinance, which is also required, and she's going to file it on the title records, and we sort of talked about that. The reason why we're filing it on the title records is in that way the ordinance is searchable on the internet so the general public can find it by way of the internet. After you pass it, the second reading in the February meeting, again, somebody, and it's probably gonna be me, has to send a copy of the signed ordinance plus publisher's affidavit, both to the Superior Court Clerk, who again files it, and also to the Secretary of State's office. And then that amendment will be published in the 2020 Georgia laws by the Secretary of State, just as if the General Assembly had passed the ordinance.
Thank you, sir.
So does the motion need to include directing staff to start that process, or can that wait up to the second?
I think it's fine that you go ahead and include it, just that either the city manager or the city attorney can proceed forward with following the procedures to have proper adoption of the ordinance.
Make a motion, we add that to the motion, amend the motion and add.
We have a request to amend the motion.
Second.
We have a second to amend the motion. All in favor? Now we need to vote on the motion. Do we have a motion to approve? We had to go back to the amendment.
Motion as approved. Motion is amended, I mean.
Do we have a motion to amend? Okay, motion is amended. Do we have a
Motion
second?
is amended. I make a motion, we approve the first reading. I think that's what we're really looking for.
And a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Good luck getting that down, Brandon.
So we don't have to read that again.
Yeah.
1 hour.
Hey, that's
1 hour
part
and
of
6
the
minutes.
record. I believe the record was 45 minutes. I reminded Ann of
The
that.
white ordinance, 1 hour and 6 minutes.
Okay, moving forward. Request for approval of intergovernmental agreement with the City of Jasper, Pickens County Development Authority of Pickens County for the purpose of establishing an economic development position for the economic development of Pickens County and the City of Jasper. I think, Dr. Proctor, you have been the lead on this,
Yes, sir.
so where you at? Go ahead, something.
I'm in the mayor's report below. Be glad to go ahead and tell you that we've been working on this for about 18 months, I guess, and we, of course, had used some of the restricted funds to start a strategic planning process around economic development. We engaged the Chasing Group, which is a very well-reputed group that specializes in economic development to do our hire. We have partnered with the county on this initiative. During the course of that position development, we discussed multiple models and taking into account some of the issues that we had faced with the dissolution of our last economic development position. We agreed to partner. This person will actually report to the Development Authority. As you all know, we were able to secure a position on the county authority representing the city, and that is currently filled by Mr. Douglas. And then over the last 2 months, we've been interviewing candidates and had about 3 weeks ago made a final selection. During the course of that time, working with Mr. Landrum, Mr. Syfan, Brandon, myself, Tom Bogus, the other members of the committee, we have come up with this intergovernmental agreement, which clearly delineates the hard work of the committee, the collaborative spirit of this initiative, and we're ready to hire Mr. Green Suttles effective January the 13th as his first date. As it is spelled out in the agreement, he will report to the authority as his employer. It will be funded on a 50-50% basis. We do have a provisional budget that has been presented. He will be housed in the chamber on an in-kind relationship. where he will have space and staffing there, but all other expenses will be met by the authority and funded by the city and county. Future oversight of this position will ultimately lie in the authorities, the county authorities' hands, and of course we'll have that budgetary responsibility for any amendments to the budget, or when they come back for us to reapprove. That will be the opportunity to evaluate the success of this plan. It's a 3-year plan, and it's part of the initial agreement was a true strategic planning process. A committee which was initially made up of 3 members of the city and 3 members of the county, which was Mr. Raffield, Brandon Douglas, myself from the city, Becky Denny, Don Bogus, Todd Payne from the county. Now that we have Brandon on the authority, there's also 3 members of the authority that is on that committee. They will be working with the authority and the Chasen group to do a strategic planning process around economic development, which will give Mr. Suttles his objectives to accomplish, which will subsequently result in his bonus structure, so to speak, which will take into effect the second year. First year is a flat salary. So very exciting development that we have worked collaboratively with. Very, very hard to find some common ground and move forward with this important initiative, which ties into some of the other things that I'll mention in some of my other committee reports. But
Okay.
appreciate the time, sir.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve this intergovernmental agreement.
Motion to approve the IGA between the City of Jasper, Pickens County, the Development Authority of Pickens County for the purpose of establishing an economic development position for the economic development of Pickens County and the City of Jasper. This motion approves it also includes the amendment of our 2020 budget for the City of Jasper, necessary cost, share commitments, and to use fund balance if necessary.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. All in favor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Request for reduced water sewage rate, Brandon?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I believe historically, you all have been provided at the meeting, which I'm prepared to do momentarily, a list of persons and applications to allow for a reduction in their water sewer rates in accordance with the Jasper Code Ordinance Section 82-27. This is allowed on persons 62 and older with household incomes of 2% or less. May submit in writing a request to City Council to have a discount. As such, I will provide, I'll just pass it around and take a few moments to look and subsequently provide direction.
Thanks for the supporting documents, Brandon.
Yes, sir.
Entertain a motion to approve the reduced rates as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have motion is second. Discussion.
Brandon, is this an ordinance that has been established that determines these parameters? I guess it is, it's not in front of me, so. I'm just curious why this could be administered by your folks.
This was actually the very first time that I've had the privilege of seeing this. So in consultation with Mr. Syfan, I plan to just kind of do a little background, because up until tonight, I'd never seen what was being distributed.
Okay.
Further discussion?
No, sir.
We have a motion is second. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion, make sure we, just tell them it's for personnel issues.
Oh, this is for personnel discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We are now in executive session. Council, motion to come out of executive session.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? You're back. Council, I make a motion to end the employment of Lisa Hoyle as City Clerk and Finance Director.
Make a motion to end employment of Lisa Hoyle, Finance Director and City Clerk.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor? No. Any opposed? Unanimous. Council, I need a motion to approve the interim Director of Finance contract.
Motion to approve the interim director agreement.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. I would entertain a motion to remove Mayor Weaver and Lisa Hall from signature cards and to add Mayor Lawrence and Mayor Pro Tem Levy.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Do we want to add the requirement that there'll be at least one member of professional staff on each check?
So we're going to add a requirement to have at least one member of staff on each check. Is that correct? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Unanimous. Okay, Economic Development Hiring Committee update. Council members Sonny Proctor and Kirk Rathfield.
Mr. Mayor, I think that I gave a good update. I don't have anything else to add on that.
You did? Yeah. Mr. Rathfield, anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay. The Roper Pool Property Development Committee update. Councilman Proctor.
We're, as you know, we've applied for a grant to develop phase 1 of that park, and we're just waiting, actually a pre-application, and we're just waiting on word about whether that grant will be approved or not. As I mentioned earlier with some of our other parks, I think it is important that we make these a priority. We do have SPOS dollars that will be specifically for some of our park capital expenditures, and no other update other than that, sir.
Thank you. And finance report, Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. In your packet, I'm not prepared to go through line by line, but from a general standpoint, I did want to applaud you all as well as staff for a good fiscal year and calendar year 2019. All along the way, we started talking about some of the revenues that were not going to be experienced. Therefore, the expenditures have been significantly curbed. Specifically, you all had approved an original budget of $4,948,658 for fiscal year 19. Your total expenditures were well short of that at $4,605,386. So the reasoning that's significant is the TAVT, the title ad valorem taxation, hit us July 1, and as such, we had over $120,000+ worth of typical revenue that was not received. As such, we had already anticipated on utilizing $100,000 worth of fund balance, which is what you all have done, is built up a robust fund balance to allow for things like this to happen and to mitigate any of those lost revenues. Preliminarily, it does appear as though that we're less than $100,000 in the red as it relates to making sure that the revenues we did receive, we curbed our expenditures, and as such, we're able to avert spending $4.9 million, which we received $4.4. So had you all just looked at your budget and said to do X, Y, and Z without good fiscal restraint, and I'd like to applaud the staff who's here tonight along with their employees that did a good job of buying into the idea that they're still being called on to do the service and to do the good things of the city, all the while knowing that we're going to have less revenue. So for that, I just wanted to specifically point that out and to thank you all for your trust and confidence in that budget, and moving forward to the 2020 budget. We'll continue to identify ways of providing service as our good men and women of the city of.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Roads and other reports. Lonnie? The end of those other reports too.
Do I?
Want those other reports?
Oh, okay. All right, Mayor and Council, the planning, zoning, and building department has been pretty busy. We've got people from Grandview, the association up there, sent out an email asking people just to let us know if they want meters and if they're interested. No money's transpiring or anything like that. It's just showing an interest. Those started coming in last Friday, and we've had one or two today. So people are reacting. The water plant up there, they're hoping to have everything complete by September of 2022. That's installed and working operation. The lines out of the lake to the plant by May of 2021. The DOT has been inspecting bridges. They're going to be inspecting Cove Bridge down here to see if it has any faults to it or anything like that. There's a possibility, if they do find anything, that we could possibly get a grant from the DOT to cover, or maybe even add it into our LMIG for the next year to help finance that. We've been out inspecting today, inspecting all the grading sites, and looking for breaches because of the rain of last few days and what's coming. And as of August, we've been working in the department down there. We've had 9 permits for remodels, 8 permits for commercial, 13 for residential, and we currently have 26 active permits open right now that we're working on. We've already had 1 building remodel permit issued this year, and 5 residential permits are in process. And since November, we've had 328 business licenses renewed and 4 new business licenses issued.
And if I could add to that, Mr. Mayor and Council, I would like to point out, you noticed Lonnie Waters kind of took over the development manager position in August. At the time, I was just concerned about some of the operations. He stepped up, done a phenomenal job. From a budgetary standpoint, there had only been a few $1,000s collected, and a budgeted amount for that department was around $35,000. So there was some significant heartburn on if we were going to be able to catch up, and they nearly got to $42,000 by year end. So August to year end.
Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Lonnie, when's our limit money come in typically?
We should have our big money within 10 days. I got that email from them, and they said within 10 days we should be receiving a check. But in a conversation with Brandon, we did not spend our big money for 2019. We banked it over. You can reserve that, and I wasn't aware of this. Brandon brought it to my attention. We can reserve it up to 3 years. So we've got it banked till next year, so we can put the two together. We'll have about $140,000 of big money. And then we had put it in for sidewalks. So we're expecting to do a big sidewalk project inside the city.
Does the limit come from the state or does it come
Comes from the DOT.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Chief Luck. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Jasper Police Department for the month of December responded to 648 calls from the 911 center. The grand total of the year ending 2019, 9,485 calls. The month of December, we responded to 59 motor vehicle accidents, issued a total of 39 citations for the following: 2 DUI, 21 speeding, 4 shoplifting, and 2 suspended or revoked driver's license. Georgia State Patrol issued a total of 36 for a grand total in city court of 75. 8 state warrants were taken by the department for the following: 2 for simple battery, misdemeanor, 1 aggravated assault felony, 1 contributing to delinquency of a minor misdemeanor, 1 simple battery, family violence, 1 criminal trespass, 1 shoplifting felony, 1 theft by taking. Miscellaneous calls responded to: 41 alarm calls, 18 disorderly, 5 harassment, 7 trespassing or loitering, 44 suspicious activities, 16 domestic disputes, and investigated 0 burglaries.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, I'd like to commend your folks. As you know, like early last week, in the middle of the night, there was some doors that were opened at my home when I was out of town, and your guys came in, and as I watched sequentially these alarms going off, I felt fairly certain that I was being burglarized. It turned out that your guys had such a fast response time that they'd gotten there and were clearing the house, and appreciate it.
That's good. I think I made a joke to them. I said that my guys make a mess when they make breakfast. Thank you.
They did a good job on New Year's Eve as well.
Yeah, it went very peaceful, no arrests, no incidents, went great.
Yeah, they did a good job.
Chief Luck, fire report that we hope you don't have.
Right.
That is what you pay me for.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. For the month of December, the city's fire department responded to 86 emergencies. Those were 2 structure fires, Both of those were assistance from the county fire. No vehicle fires, no grass, 6 motor vehicle accidents with injuries, 68 emergency medical responses, 10 other calls. As of December 31st, 1,341 calls. Fire inspection looked at 3 sets of plans for construction. Actually, that number is wrong because a lot of these numbers are higher, and I did not have the update. Conducted 17 inspections during the month. I also included a year-end report for you that's in your package. Simply the total numbers you've heard all year long put together.
Thanks.
Technology.
Now, for those of you who come out tonight, thank you for being here. And if any of you have anything that you would wish to say before our council, please come forward and do so. All seem to be well, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Move to second. We stand adjourned.
Thanks, sir.